Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So today's video is going to be part 2 of the Gothic films I recommend. Now, as I said in the first part, I'm only recommending ones that are in my collection. So I'm not saying these are better than any other Gothic films. I just don't really see the point in recommending films I can't kind of hold up and show you. Otherwise I could literally just recommend anything to you, couldn't I? So it makes more sense for me to only show you things that are in my collection. Also, there is going to definitely be a part 3 because I made a huge pile of the Gothic movies I wanted to show you and then realised just how many there was and how long it would take. So I've already split these up into 2 piles, so I'm only showing you one of those today. So part 3 will be along on my channel at some point. I'm just going to dive right in because I've got more this time than I did the first time. And so I'm not going to go, whereas in the first video I went into a little bit of detail about like what the movie was about and stuff, I'm just going to literally list them up, hold them up and list them off because otherwise it's going to take too long. So Red Riding Hood starring Amanda Seyfried, it's actually really hard not to start talking about them. This is From Hell starring Johnny Depp and Heather Graham. The next one is Nosferatu. This is the one that was released it was released I think Christmas Day 2024 for the US. For the UK it was New Year's Day 2025. I don't know the release date for anything else. The Beguiled. Now this one I've seen the movie, but this is a brand new one. That's why it looks really shiny. This is Kirsten Dunst. It's Nicole Kidman, Colin Farrell. It's a really, really different type of Gothic movie. All of the Gothic elements are there, but instead of darkness, it's light. So it's like a totally different approach, and something I actually really, really enjoyed because often when we think Gothic, we think so dark and, you know, damp and dreary. And those elements are there in some places, but a lot of the clothing, as I'm sure you can see from the cover, is very white, is very beige, is very light colours. A lot of this movie is based on that light coming through the curtains. And really, the light is a huge character in this movie. And rather than shadows and candlelight, it really is kind of sunlight that we follow in this movie. And I thought that was a beautiful, different type of movie to share on the Gothic list. The next one is Dark Shadows. The next one is one of my favourites. It's Dorian Gray. That's one of my favourites. I should say stories, not movies. But I like the movie too, but I should make it more clear that the story of Dorian Gray is one of my favourites. The movie I just like. A Cure for Wellness. This was one that when I very first watched it, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was expecting, and I was so pleasantly surprised, and it's absolutely fantastic. Winchester with Helen Mirren. Sweeney Todd, which is another Johnny Depp, obviously, Tim Burton. Carmilla, which I have mentioned recently. This is the 2019 one. Have mentioned it recently in my Carmilla video. Jane Eyre, which is a gorgeous Gothic tale, and I personally love this adaptation. I know that there are a few different adaptations, and this probably is not the most popular, but in terms of imagery, I freaking love this adaptation. The Company of Wolves, which is one of my favourite all-time movies ever. The Witch, for obvious reasons. It's just such a beautiful Gothic atmospheric movie. All of these, and I will say this in a second, but all of these are different, all of them have the different elements that Gothic movies bring. The Wolfman, Emily Blunt does such a fantastic job in this movie, although there was things about it that I wasn't expecting, and I can't say I was the biggest fan of, but overall I like the movie. And then The Woman in Black 2, Angel of Death. So those are the movies I'm recommending in this part. I'm going to save the others for the next part. All of these movies have different elements. So in the very first episode in this series, part 1 of the Gothic movies that I recommended, I talked to you a little bit about what is considered Gothic when it comes to films, the atmosphere, the imagery, the types of stories, so on and so forth. Now, Those things are here in all of these stories, but they show up in different ways for different stories. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the category of horror for me. It's the same when it comes to books as well, is that there are certain points that need to be hit for it to be considered Gothic. I think I said horror a second ago, I meant Gothic. There are certain points that need to be hit for it to be considered Gothic, but it doesn't always have to be the same. For example, like I said, with The Beguiled, the movie is very much playing with light. The shots in this movie that are absolutely gorgeous are the kind of dappled sunlight images, and it is a very kind of white movie. The sky is very grey / white all the way through, so it's very bright. Then when we look at something like the Robert Eggers Nosferatu, it's dark. We're playing with shadows, we're playing with darkness, and we're playing with morality a lot of the time as well. We're playing with psychological aspects, we're playing with morality, humanity, on a psychological level. And so even when you can have two movies that are kind of as far apart as this, they still come into the same category. Same thing could be said, you know, for Dark Shadows, which has very much of a comedic element to it. Very, very different to these two. But obviously being a Tim Burton film, it has that vibe too. So it's almost it's more character based, it's heavy character based. I don't want to use the word novelty because I think that's insulting, but I can't think of another thing to say at this particular moment in time. But what I mean is some of them are very heavy story based films, and the characters themselves aren't necessarily as fully fleshed out, I should say. But the story is, and the atmosphere is. Some of them are very character heavy, and the characters are fleshed out so deeply, but the story isn't very strong, but the atmosphere is strong. Sometimes it's literally just the visuals, and that carries it through for me, you know. But they all fit into this Gothic category for multiple reasons. And yeah, I'm a huge fan, as I'm sure you are aware by now if you've watched any of my videos, huge fan of Gothic cinema. So those are my recommendations for this time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments bar below, and I will get back to you as and when I can. And if you would like to recommend any of your favourite Gothic movies or TV shows, please feel free to leave those in the comments bar as well, because as I said at the start, I'm only sharing things that is in my collection. You may have lots of things that you've seen, or there may be lots of things that I've seen too, but I don't have them in my collection, so I'm not going to talk about them. So you may want to put them in the comments bar below to share with other people. As I said, there is a part 3 because I have too many Gothic movies in my collection, and there's a chance I'll have even more by the time I get around to filming part 3, because I like to stagger series. I don't like to just kind of have the same things over and over again posted on my channel. What I will say is, for the most part in doing this series, I'm not going to go too heavy into fairy tales, and I'm not going to go too heavy into specific stories. Obviously I've just shared Nosferatu with you, and I'm sure if I didn't, I'm sure I would have put Bram Stoker's Dracula in the first series. I can't remember, in the first episode, can't remember if I did, but I'm sure I would have done. It would be really strange, I think, if I didn't. But I own like an awful lot of Dracula movies. I'm not going to go through all of those. I own an awful lot of fairy tale movies that absolutely would come into the Gothic category, but I intend to do videos on my Dracula movies. I intend to do videos on my fairy tale stuff, so I don't really want to go, I don't want to just overlap loads of things basically, because I think that's a waste of time. So yeah, I'll see you guys in a video soon. Bye for now.